Hey everyone, what is up, and welcome back to my Higurashi When They Cry Let's Play. Today we'll be recording episode 25, and... Ooh, the last one was a big one. Um, in the last episode, we saw the return of Teppei Hojo. I believe that's his name, at least. Satoko's uncle, right? Very abusive uncle. Um, and we kind of saw how that started playing out, and it was really clear that Satoko's being abused, right? He's making her work like a damn slave. Um, Talking to her like in terrible ways, extremely rude. Um, Making her go on her bike right all the way to some extremely distant store, right, to grocery shop for like booze and snacks, right? Like it's terrible. It's hard to watch. Um, that's just a really short summary. But it was a great episode, and I'm really curious to see how we're gonna move on from that because Keichi basically promised, like, look, I'm not gonna abandon you. Like, I'm gonna find a way to help you, right? So we're gonna see if he starts to like formulate a plan or act on one, even. Um, Gonna see how the friend group, uh, how the friend group kind of responds to everything going on. Because we saw yesterday that there was some drama because of all of it, but everybody is just kind of feeling defeated, right? Feel like they're waiting on some kind of miracle to happen, right? So I'm curious to see if anyone's going to try anything or if they're just going to keep waiting, like how it's going to affect the vibe of the group. Probably a lot. But anyways, I could see this episode starting to build up to some big events. I wouldn't be shocked if there's nothing big in this one, or like super duper important. But I could see it setting up some really important things. Let's just go ahead and jump into it, and we'll see what's going on, though. I went home and washed the day's sweat off in the shower. Normally, I could reset everything by taking a shower and forgetting all the bad things. But that didn't happen today. I got out of the shower to find fresh underwear placed neatly in the laundry basket. Normally, I didn't stop to think about it, but today I felt happy at my mother's consideration. Guess everything that's going on as I'm kind of rethinking things. At the same time, however, it made me realize how much Satoko must be suffering. At the very moment I was appreciating this gentle kindness, Satoko might be being bruised by her uncle's cruel words, or his fists, but... I went up to the second floor and shut myself in my bedroom. Then, facing my desk, I folded my arms. My topic of thought, of course, was Satoko. We thought that if we could just get a public aid... Excuse me. We thought that if we could just get a public agency to intervene in the right way, the problem would be solved. With what Coach said, I don't think it would be so easy. I didn't think it would be so easy. Yeah, probably not. Satoko was obstinate. She would stubbornly deny the abuse and try to endure it. And that was an act of atonement toward Satoshi, who had protected her before and then run away. As long as she thought that way, the situation wouldn't be so simple. But earlier, before Coach, I made a clear declaration. If I thought Satoko was in danger, then I would do what I had to. In the end, that meant I was just going to wait and see, too. Nevertheless, I thought I'd drawn a clearer line than Coach or my friends had. If the time came, I would report it. Over the phone. Given Satoko's personality, she might criticize me if she found out, but I believed it was ultimately the best decision. Wait, Keichi Maibara. Would that really be all it took for the problem to end? Say that I reported it to a public agency like the Child Consultation Center. What if they stuck to their wait-and-see attitude like last year again? Last year they decided to do just that, and the situation improved temporarily, but then the aunt, thinking herself a laughingstock, increased her tormenting in secret. In the end, things became more underhanded than ever before. This year it was her uncle. I had just seen him for the first time today, but the man seemed much more direct, much more violent than the word underhanded could imply. He wasn't like their aunt. No, not that subtle. He was more direct. He might also assault her with punches and kicks. That could easily be discerned from the bruises and such I saw on Satoko's body. Shit. You're too naive, Keichi Maibara. However heroic it may seem to report what was happening, if it doesn't save her, then it doesn't mean anything. Reporting things to a public agency was only one option, and leaving everything to them would be dangerous. We would need something more to guarantee Satoko's safety. I scratched madly at my head, thinking, then tilted it back, wanting at least a little bit of calm. The memories of angry arguing with my friends today came to mind. I was embarrassed that I hadn't realized it until Rena said something. She was right. My house is big. Compared to all the houses with the straw-thatched roofs in Hinamizawa, it was really big. We did actually have empty rooms. I've never thought that we were affluent, but also never that we were poor. I just didn't admit it because people would think I was arrogant. But maybe my family really is wealthy. I mean, you got a house like that, dude. I think that's a fair assumption. I think that's a fair assumption that you kind of came from money. I feel like that's a shockingly common thing, though, right? Upper middle class, or like the lower end of the upper class, right? I feel like I've seen like a lot of kids that I knew in those classes really were convinced they were not that well off. Right? I'm like, dude, you have like literally have a 3-story house. You have every game console known to man, right? Like, I'm like, bro, your family has money, right? Like, some people just don't realize it, because I mean they don't talk finances with their parents, right? Like, you know, and so as a kid, you know, you'd probably just think of every time you didn't get something you wanted, and you're like, oh, we must not have that much money, right? But I don't know. Maybe that's just pure anecdote, but at the very least, it seems Keiichi is kind of the same way. Maybe that's not, like, you know, I'm not saying he always felt the same way, right? And I think that feeling of arrogance might kind of be it too, right? Like he was saying. Some people just don't think too hard about it. They don't want to come off as arrogant. Anyways, but maybe my family really is wealthy. We had a few rooms we could lend to Satoko. The guest rooms are only in use when people related to my dad's job come and stay every once in a while. Plus, if we cleaned up a few of the rooms my dad uses for storage, they could work for her as well. As for food expenses, that might have been a more serious problem than a kid like me could imagine. Lunch every day would be manageable. All of our friends would just have to bring a little bit more for lunch than they usually did. With everyone pecking at everyone else's food anyway, it would be manageable. For breakfast and dinner, though, that would have to be up to Mom. I would need to convince her to lend Satoko more than just a room. Of course, I don't even think convincing her of that would be easy. But how much did it cost for one person to eat? How many tens of thousands of yen per month? They couldn't complain about it if I shouldered that, could they? I only had 10 or 20,000 yen in savings, but it was something. I actually had even more, thanks to New Year's gifts and such, but my parents had taken all that and put it into a fixed time deposit. If I could get access to that, it should add up to a lot of money. And if I got that far, I should ask Mion or Rena to share some of the burden. Of course, I wouldn't depend on that. Rena got mad at me, didn't she? About how I shouldn't just shove responsibility onto others. I'd have to ask for help. Even so, I'd basically be saving her myself. I would follow through on it. Oh, but it wouldn't only be food expenses. There were a lot of other things that you couldn't do without, like baths and laundry. My mother was awfully methodical and strict about cutting out inefficiencies, and for once, that was troublesome. She might even make reference to the money it would cost for the detergent Satoko would use for her own clothes. I couldn't think only about food expenses. I needed more money. Hey, wait, Keiichi Maibara. Since when was all this about money? Even if you could afford it, you would need your parents' permission first. They'd be looking after a young girl for a really long time. What would I say to persuade them? Just calm down a little bit, Keiichi Maibara, and you'll realize right away that you can't. Even if you asked them seriously, they would tell you to call the police. Even if you managed to gain their empathy, why should the Maibara family have to shoulder all of the burden by itself? That's what would happen. That was it. It was very sad and frustrating, but no matter how much I wanted to help, my resolution alone couldn't save anything.
そんなにも子供って無力なのかよ。
Well, he's starting to realize just how difficult it is to just take in someone like that. I mean, he was trying to, you know, I said this in the last episode, he was trying to pawn Satoko off on I hate how much I yawn during videos. I literally don't know why it happens so much. Anyways, he's starting to realize, like, you know, like I said this, he was trying to pawn off Satoko on the Sonozaki family in Mion. And I think he's starting to realize how much of a burden that would be, and how he probably couldn't convince his family of it either, right? And so it's kind of unfair to expect other kids, right, who really are, like he's saying, they are this powerless, right? What are you supposed to do as a kid, right? Like, you know, you can't really be responsible for raising someone and taking care of someone at that age. I felt frustrated. I believed my feelings were stronger than anyone else's. I even thought they were stronger than Coach's. And yet... At that point, there were 2 knocks on my door, and Mom poked her head inside.
起きてたの？さっきからご飯ってずっと呼んでるわよ。
あ、うん。今行く。
As someone financially dependent on his parents, I shouldn't say this, but I just sat around doing nothing, and food suddenly appeared. It felt so natural to me that I'd shamelessly thought of it as the responsibility of the parents who gave birth to me. But when I realized that natural thing was actually a right, I came to realize just how hard it was to grant that privilege to others. That is true. I was going to say, I mean, like, it kind of is the responsibility of the parents who gave birth to you, right? But it is, like, it's not something that's, like, guaranteed, and it, yeah, right? Like, it's hard to do that, right? It's not easy to support people, right? Even the boring meal in front of me, no better than it ever was, had more meaning than that tonight. There was food for 3 on the table right now, for Dad, for Mom, and for me. I couldn't imagine how hard it would be to add another place at the table. Think, Keichi Maibara. It was hard to make food for 4. Then just think about how 4 people could eat food made for 3. Oh. I changed around the way I thought, and with that I began to consider an unthinkably bold plan. That's right. I didn't need to give my parents permission. She should just live here in secret. What? Good luck with that one, bro. I got upset when I found out a while ago, but if I remembered right, if you climbed out the window then shimmy down the first floor roof of the gutter, you could go in and out of the house directly from my room. Satoko's physical ability far surpassed my own, so it would be even easier for her. I hadn't even thought about this, but her living here secretly was actually a necessity. Not really. I understand, like, the desperation here, but, like, dude, how long do you think it would be before they find out, right? Like, I'd give it, like, a week tops, right? Like, I'd only have to bring Satoko to my house when the public agency said they would wait and see, right? And it's, like, the big thing is, like, this, like, you're either super ridiculously careful and her life here practically is, like, one of complete isolation, or they find out incredibly quick because you have to play, like, if you don't want her to be stuck here all the time, you have to let her leave all the, like, regularly, right? And that creates a lot of opportunities to get discovered, right? This is kind of a terrible plan, I'm gonna be honest. In other words, if Satoko's uncle continued to be her guardian, if, in such a situation, word got out that she was here, her uncle would barge in and drag Satoko back with him. Her uncle was her rightful guardian, so my parents would hand her over without an argument, no doubt. So, I needed to keep it a secret that she was living here. I mean, I guess that part of the plan makes a little more sense. Like, or is that even part of the plan? Right? Like, I don't know if that's part of the plan or just a statement of fact, right? That if word got out, yeah, I think it is just a statement of fact that if she lived here, the uncle would bring her back, right? At first I thought this was some masterful plan to reveal him in the act of abuse, but, like, it doesn't seem like that to me. If it needs to be a secret, then having my parents' help would mean a lot, but gotta deceive your allies first, like they always say. This is a terrible plan. Okay. Persuading my parents was an unrealistic proposition, so I searched for a way to have her live here in secret. When I was around, she would just have to be really quiet in my room on the 2nd floor. The issue was the daytime. If she was hiding from her uncle, then she shouldn't go to school. It might be lonely, but not going would be the better option. Dude, like, forced isolation like that is just a different form of abuse, right? I'm not like this, and this isn't Keiichi doing this out of malice, but like, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily worse than what's already going on, but saying, oh yeah, you can't go to school anymore, you're just locked up here, right? How much better is that really? Would Satoko even want that? Like, probably not, right? Like, legitimately, I think she'd rather tough it out over there and get to see her friends than to just live here completely isolated. I don't know. Like, it seems seems like she has too much pride for this. And short of like kidnapping her and keeping her here by force, right? I mean, if she has too much pride for this, what do? Right? Like, I don't know. I really don't like this plan. It feels like Keiichi is really starting to come up with some wild plans, and I'm worrying that they're just going to keep getting worse, right? I just keep worrying that eventually this is going to escalate to, if I remove the uncle from the picture, he can't abuse her, right? And that's where I'm at, right? Let's just keep moving on with this plan. Man. It might be lonely, but not going would be the better option. I could easily teach Satoko the stuff she learns in her grade. Actually, during school, I mostly help all the younger kids out rather than study my own stuff. During the day, I would need to go to school, so I wouldn't be at home. My parents respected my privacy now that I was this age, so they wouldn't go snooping around in my room while I was gone. I think. It would take one time that they're looking for something in your room, for example, right? To, like, for you to be cooked, right? Or not even looking for something, right? Just, like, throwing something in there, right? Like, I don't know. Like, my parents respected my privacy, but every now and then they might throw something into my room, right? I mean, I think normally they would, like, you know, maybe leave it outside, but sometimes, you know, whatever, you get back, I left something upstairs, and they throw it on my bed, right? And in a situation where it's as simple as, to find Satoko, pretty much all they need to do is open the door, right? Like, I don't know. I can't see this plan working, and I think he's really, really desperate. If she holed herself up in my room, it would be okay, right? If my parents did come, thanks to where the second floor was, she could hear their approach from the sound of them coming up the stairs, and there would be a little bit of time before they got all the way up. I estimated a few seconds that she would be able to hide herself in the closet while making no noise, and having to do this every time? Dude, like, that's a terrible life. Wait, Keiichi. Something doesn't make sense. If she can't go to school, then what'll she do for lunch? Calm down already. I could just leave her my own lunch, couldn't I? I should just go to school without lunch and get everyone else to split theirs with me. Okay. That's good. No more contradictions or oversights, right? Oh yeah, none. Oh, breakfast and dinner. I could somehow get her to go without breakfast. I can go with 2 meals a day when I sleep in on Sundays, after all. Every night, I'd pretend as though I had a bigger appetite and then ask for a bigger helping. And then I could just somehow give part of that to Satoko. Dude, good luck with that. You know how pressed my parents would be if every night I was like, yeah, man, I'm just so hungry. Yep. Oh, wow, that's half of my plate uneaten. Let me just bring that to my room, right? Which, like, okay, eventually my parents didn't care if we ate in our rooms, but, like, a lot of people's parents do care, right? Like, I don't know. I keep poking holes in this, and, like, I think at this point I don't even need to, right? I think there's already a ton of... This theory is unbelievably shaky, right? But, like... Or not theory, this whole plan is shaky. But, like, I don't know, like, Keiichi's just too desperate to see that. As a test, I stood up from my seat with my plate of fish in my hands.
どうしたの、ケイチ。ご飯は座って食べなさい。
ちょっと気分が変えたくなってさ。自分の部屋で食べてもいいかな。
ボロボロ落としてよ。食事は食卓で食べなさい。
ごめん。
Hey, wait. I only tried to take away 1 plate of fish, and they ganged up on me? In reality, it was impossible for me to smuggle food away without my parents knowing about it. Yeah, no kidding. But it must have been worth taking the time to think about. There must be some trick, some method to avoid them realizing, dude, no one's gonna miss all, like, the food going missing, right? People, like, that will get noticed. Even if I can't think of one today, I might think of one tomorrow. My appetite was rapidly fading, so I finished early and went back to my room. I went back there and tried to think about it from Satoko's point of view. For example, let's say my parents were coming up the stairs right now. I've got to hide. I opened the closet. Clatter, clatter. It didn't open quietly. Hey, wait. Didn't it always open real smooth and quiet? Why was it suddenly doing this now? Was this house even structurally safe? Was it already showing signs of dilapidation? Or the hinge is just not greased well enough? Did I just apply some lubricating wax? The sound itself may have been soft, but it left me uneasy as to whether my parents would detect it happening when they climbed the stairs. But this was an easy problem. I could do something about it. I just had to fix it up a little bit so it didn't make noise anymore. For now, I'll close myself in the closet as though I'd successfully hid. I basically always left my futon out on the floor. I couldn't think of any real reason my parents would want to go into my closet. Even so, there still might be some reason they would. I might need to construct some sort of camouflage so that she wouldn't be noticed even if they did open it. But the more she worried about that, the less time she'd have to actually hide, meaning it would be more likely they'd hear a noise. And then, I suddenly had to go to the bathroom. The bathroom? The need to use the toilet, so obvious and yet such a fatal flaw. The only bathroom was on the first floor. It would be absolutely impossible for her to use it without my family realizing. I might need to set up a portable toilet, like a chamber pot, I guess. Satoko would hate it, so she could go in my room. But the stench would be pretty terrible. Anyone sensitive would probably notice the smell without even coming into the room. The bath was okay, though. She could just take a bath when my parents were out. But I couldn't do anything about a toilet. When her stomach started to hurt, my parents were lazing around downstairs, she'd be in trouble. It was then that I noticed that I'd been clawing at my head with both hands. I sat down in the dark closet with my knees against my chest. I buried my face in them and tore at my hair. The more I thought, the more contradictions popped up. The more I thought, the more things failed. And the more I worried, the more I was reminded of how little power I actually had. My back started to hurt from staying in a cramped place for so long. But if I was to shelter Satoko, I would need to force her to feel this pain. To live in such a dark, narrow, suffocating place forever. But it would still be better than being abused by her uncle. Or so I wanted to think. It got hard to breathe, so I gave in and crawled out of the closet. I looked at the clock, and to my surprise, it was 3:30 in the morning. It felt like so little time, but it was so unbelievably long. When I realized that, I was slammed with a terrible urge to sleep as if the time had only just caught up with me. I didn't have enough strength to fight it, and I fell flat onto my futon. Shit, I can't just go to sleep like this. If I waste any time, that'll mean I'm taking the same wait-and-see attitude that me and the coach and everyone else did. I needed to keep worrying about how to rescue Satoko for a minute, or even a second longer, than everyone else. Isn't there a better way? Isn't there a better way? That one phrase I spoke to myself swirled around and around in a spiral, and steadily took over my entire mind. For my last moment of consciousness, I thought, there were a lot of blind spots in what I'd considered tonight. I absolutely wasn't wrong for having those ideas. Tomorrow I would suggest this bold plan to the others. Mion might be able to help somehow, and Rena was really sharp, so she might have a good suggestion. And above all, I needed to rescue Satoko once again, everyone helping out. I felt pathetic for letting myself fall asleep. Sorry, Satoko. Okay, I think this goes without saying, but this dude's state of mind is, bad. Like, really bad. First of all, I mean, just that desire to, not want to sleep is already, he's stressing himself out to the point where he, thinks he doesn't have time to sleep, and that alone is creating problems. And we're actually going to go a few lines in, because I do not want to keep staring at this white screen. The ceiling blurred into view. It was hot. There was a thin layer of moist sweat on me. The voices of the cicadas permeating my room were somehow grating to my head.
で、今日、日曜日じゃないよな。
I remember today was a weekday and quickly brought myself to consciousness, and then, finally, I leaped out of bed. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he can't even, he thinks he's wronging Satoko by sleeping, right? And I mean, you continue that line of thought, you go a long enough time without sleep, things are gonna get bad. Sleep deprivation is no joke, right? The way it messes with your mental, right? And it could easily, like, get him to do things that he really just shouldn't, right, otherwise. But anyways, talking about this whole thing so long, right, I don't really disagree with this idea right here. There are a lot of blind spots in what he considered tonight, but it wasn't wrong to have these ideas, right? I don't think it's wrong to try to find ways to rescue Satoko, and I think that's a respectable thing to do. But the thing is, one, you have to consider if the person you're trying to rescue actually wants to be rescued, right? Into the, like, especially into the situation they're being rescued in, right? The plan he has right now is, like, barely better than what she's going through right now, and arguably worse in some ways, right? You're trading, like, physical abuse, right? Physical verbal abuse, as well as, like, being forced into working for complete social isolation, right? And being locked in a cramped space, basically, right? Like, this is one of those times where I'm like, I'm not going to compare traumas, right? I'm not going to compare the terrible, right? Because those are both pretty terrible, right? I don't like. That's kind of just a lose-lose situation, right? Like, out of the frying pan into the fire type beat, right? But the idea of trying to help her, I don't think that's wrong, right? I think the problem is he's gonna take this to more and more extremes, right? That's the problem. He thinks he's the only one who can do anything, and so he's going to get extreme. Like, I don't know. It feels like such an obvious setup that he's going to get really extreme about the way he solves this problem. Even if we ignored the monologue, right? From from what, chapter 5, like, or 6 starting, whichever one it was, right? Even if we completely ignore that, right, that mention of murderous intent, I mean, it feels pretty obvious. The easiest way to stop her uncle abusing her, or, like, the most foolproof way, I guess, is for that uncle to not be able to abuse her anymore, right? As in, to cease existing. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Keichi eventually have that thought, right? And as he keeps depriving himself of sleep, realizing his plans aren't going to work, and getting more and more desperate, right? Like, I really think that's where this is going to go. It's just interesting setup right now. The clock read a little before 10. I was totally late. When I wandered downstairs, my mom would get mad at me. There was nothing I could do, though. After reviewing the schedule for the school day for a moment, I suitably rearranged the stuff in my bag. I hurried and got dressed and went down the stairs. There's no sign of my parents anywhere. Maybe they went out somewhere together. So that's how it was. My mother had probably woken me up once this morning, but then I fell back asleep without remembering it. My parents, thinking I'd gone to school, left. Something like that probably happened. I went to the front door, and as I expected, it was locked. It looked like I was right. It was further evidence of my speculation being correct. When I realized my parents weren't here, I suddenly felt less like I had to rush to get to school. I feel like he's going to spend the entire day, like, home, trying to formulate a plan. There's one portion of breakfast left in the dining room. Probably mine. The milk they'd poured in it had gone warm since a while ago. When I realized how hard it would be to sneak food for Satoko, yesterday I had cried. Well, thinking back on it, food wasn't the only issue in that regard. I wasn't in a position where I could care for Satoko by myself anyway. It's such a heavy thing just to save a single person. Yeah, it is. I'd seen this on TV and in comics all the time. Those feel-good words about how you'll save your friends for sure, and such. Was that why I ran my mouth like that, swearing to save her? Because I wanted to feel good about it? No, that absolutely wasn't true. Because the fact was I couldn't save her. Because I didn't want to think like an adult. Like I couldn't do anything but watch. Had Satoko gone to school today? I immediately realized that was a meaningless question. Whether or not she did, there wouldn't be a change in the environment she'd been placed in. I mean, true. I couldn't save her, and no one else could either. And we can only pray for a miracle.
俺たちは無力か。
Right now, yeah. And that feeling of helplessness and being completely powerless is why I'm like, he's gonna get extreme, right? He's gonna realize that's one of the few things he can just do, right? Like, With a vague goal of getting to school in mind, I sluggishly put on my shoes and stumbled out the front door. I had only overslept by 2 or 3 hours, but the sunlight and air felt completely different from how they usually were in the morning. Well, of course they did. Once 10 o'clock came around, you could barely call it morning anymore. I didn't feel like walking the same old route to school. I needed to ultimately end up there, but it was like I didn't want to choose the shortest route, the most proactive one, to get to school. But in a more positive light, maybe I wanted some time to walk by myself and think. I had to go to school, partly to make sure Satoko was safe, but I hadn't come up with any plans yet. Nothing since last night. So the path I took from my house was in the complete opposite direction. If I went this way, I'd pass Rena's house and the dam site. It'd be quite a detour. I calculated how long of a detour it would end up being, then, satisfied with the answer, I started to walk. Ren had brought me to the dam site a few times. One section of it had turned into an unlawful, oversized garbage dump, and Rena really liked going fishing for junk in there. Without that, she'd come off as a completely normal girl, too. I can think of a few other qualities she could do without, but whatever. Right? If we ignore the whole her going absolutely ballistic at the mention of a Yashiro-sama's curse, completely normal. The view quickly opened up wide, and I was hit by a strong wind. There was no shelter here at this big dam site. Maybe it was a good thing I came here, I thought. At the very least, it was more healthy to think about stuff in a place like this instead of my cramped bedroom. I took a deep breath and filled my lungs with the rich, cold air unique to Hinamizawa. Ring, ring. I turned around reflexively. It was a bicycle bell. Considering where I was standing, I don't think they were trying to get me out of the way. They'd ring the bell because they wanted something from me. Is it Coach?
いやー、
Tomitake.
申し訳ないね。君、ひなみ沢の人だよね。
そうですけど。
I've seen this person around a few times. Right, I remembered. His name, I think, was Tomitake, a freelance photographer who lived in Tokyo. He would zealously visit Hinamizawa every season to take pictures, or so Mion and the others told me, I think.
フルデ神社ってここからどう行けばいいか教えてもらえないかい？マップを宿に置いてきちゃったみたいでね。困ってたんだよ。
ここから神社ですか？
I knew where everything was in my head, but explaining how to get there was difficult. I was a little irritated at having been bothered for this. When I realized it meant my detour actually meant something, that feeling faded quickly.
教えてもいいですけど、ちょっと口で説明するのは難しいですよ。一緒でよければ連れて行ってあげますけど。
え？それはかたじけないね。助かるよ。あ、でもいいのかい？
Bro ain't really got anything better to do right now anyways if he's not trying to go to school.
君の用事は？
Tomitake-san finally appeared to have realized how strange it was for a student like me to be here at this time of day. I smoothly told him not to worry about it, then turned my back and started walking towards the Furude shrine. Tomitake-san hurried to turn his bike around and came after me.
ごめんごめん。気にしないでくれよ。男には組織を離れて一匹狼になりたい時もあるんだからね。
Yeah. What a free-minded freelancer. It was easy for me, too, that he was under that impression.
僕は富武。フリーカメラマンさ。専門は野鳥と風景。まだまだ無名だけどね。
Okay, so I wasn't just imagining things when it sounded like a different voice earlier. I'm guessing they had to just splice some of the voice clips from a different release. I think somebody mentioned that in the comments. That's why the audio gets so weird sometimes. Right? But I'm like, this just sounds like a completely different voice actor.
僕は富武。フリーカメラマンさ。専門は野鳥とえ？それはかたじけないね。助かるよ。
That does not sound like the same.
でもいいのかい？君の用事は。
But if you've watched my videos, it's also been established that I'm possibly the worst at recognizing Japanese voices. Right? Or just voices speaking in languages that I don't understand, right? I'm so terrible at, like, differentiating them. So bad. And, like matching them even, right? At times, right? Like, I'm terrible at that, so I could easily just be wrong, and this is the same voice. It seemed absurd for him to introduce himself when I was just showing him to the shrine, but he gave me his name, so I needed to get mine back.
前原圭一です。まあよろしく。
圭一くんかい。よろしくね。
He seemed like a pretty silly man, but that felt kind of good considering I'd been suffocating with worry over Satoko all night. Along the way, Tomotage-san spoke at length to me about how precious the nature in Hinamizawa was, and how it was a treasure trove of rare wild birds, despite my not having asked. I wasn't interested in what he had to say, but he seemed to be enjoying himself, so I left him to it.
この石段を上がれば神社の境内です。
ありがとう。助かったよ。
Let's not ask why he needs to be at the Furude Shrine, by the way.
ああ、ちょっと遅刻しちゃったかな。
Probably meeting Takano. As Tomotage-san mumbled to himself, he left his bicycle nearby and started to climb the stairs quickly. I didn't have a watch, but as far as my internal clock could guess, it was still a little late in the morning. School wasn't very far from here. Maybe I could kill a little more time until then. With that in mind, I went up the steps in pursuit of Tomotage-san. When I reached the top of the long staircase, I arrived at the wide-open shrine grounds that were too grand-looking for this tiny village. Tomotage-san. Oh, there he is. It looked like he was supposed to be meeting someone here. Then he got lost and ended up being late. He was bowing to a lady who must have been the person he was meeting. I wonder who that lady would be. What? That lady. I knew her.
あら、前原くんじゃない。
No.
こんにちは。今日は学校はお休みかしら？
Yes.
あれなんだ、ケイチ君ついてきたのかい？
別にそんなつもりはないですよ。ただちょっと時間つぶしがしたかっただけです。
あらあら、重役出勤とは優雅なものね。さすがは有名人。今から大物ぶりを発揮してること。
Arriving at work late like an executive. Real and true. What was I, a celebrity? Well, she did say my name out of nowhere anyway. I was oddly concerned about what she meant by famous. I guess, I mean, you did have that whole baseball stunt. Maybe some people heard or saw everything going on with Satoko, and there's some rumors going around, right? Like, your name might just be getting around, you know? There's also the real possibility that it has to do with his family, because it seemed like his family was more relevant, like, or at least where the family he comes from, right, on his mother's side might be pretty relevant. So maybe she means that. I don't know.
あら、私の名前はまだ思い出せない？
Also, the Oishi incident, right? Like, that might have gone around. Like, it's a small town. Sometimes names just get around like that. Yeah, you fake.
高野美代さんだよ。村の診療所に勤めてる。ケイチ君は健康そうだから、あまり病院のお世話にはならないかな。
せっかくお知り合いになれたんだから、今度病気か何かできたら、ちょっぴりだけサービスしてあげようかしらね。
No. Dang. It is thundering out there. This lady named Takano-san. I kind of didn't remember her. Maybe we'd passed each other on the street a few times, but I was pretty sure this was the first time we'd talked. Oh, this is Hinamizawa. Even if I don't know a person's name, it's not unusual for them to know mine. I glanced at Takano-san and saw she had a bag and a camera.
ひょっとして二人とも写真仲間ですか？あ、それで待ち合わせを。
仲間でなんてとんでもない。素人の私に二郎さんが優しく手ほどきをしてくださるだけなのよ。ねえ。
そんなことないよ。高野さんは飲み込みが早いからね。僕の指導なんかなくても、実に自由に撮影をこなすよ。
I do still at some point want to actually figure out the relationship between these two. I don't think it's simple partners, whether that be romantic or just partners in crime, of photography, okay, that was just a bad expression, photography partners, right? Kind of feels more like they are partners in crime, right? Like, quite literally. I mean, breaking into that storehouse together, you gotta wonder, did they do anything in Chapter 1? Is that what got them killed? Gotta wonder, is there something going on with Chapter 3? Do they have some big motive, other than just, curiosity, right? I'm curious. Because there are two characters that they keep dying, right? So a route where they live, right, would be kind of interesting.
本当さ。
So far, they've just been exposition dumps, basically. I couldn't tell which of them was ahead in the conversation. Well, they were certainly one couple you wouldn't get tired of watching.
いよいよあさってが綿流しね。
Oh, it's soon. Oh, Lord.
今年はいい写真が撮れるといいんだけど。
明日の設営シーンからレンズに収めるつもりだよ。そういう準備風景からもお祭りの活力を捉えたいんだ。
Oh, I just remembered. There's some village festival called Watanagashi or something the day after tomorrow, on Sunday.
ひなみ沢の守り神、お社様に感謝するため、古い布団を積み重ねて供養する、そんなお祭りでしたっけ？
あら、ご名答。
I can't wait to see what dark secrets about Watanagashi Takano gives us this time.
前原くん、引っ越してきたばかりにしては博識ね。
He's a lot more involved in the village this time.
そう。お社様に感謝するためのお祭り。
But not even just involved, a lot more knowledgeable, a lot more connected, right? He just... This time around, he knows a lot of things he didn't in the first chapter. Takano-san smiled somehow meaningfully, but didn't tell me what part of a festival to think Oyashiro-sama needed to be laughed at.
やれやれ。高野さんは。でも、どうだろうね、今年は。
二度あることは三度ある。
Yeah, if it happens 4 times, it'll happen a 5th.
そしてもう四度あったのよ。五度目がないと言える方が何の根拠もないと思うけれど。
I knew what they meant by their whispered exchange. On the day of Watanagashi, a freak death always occurs, which people call Oyashiro-sama's curse, and a disappearance occurs that people call being demoned away. These strange events had happened 4 years running, and Watanagashi, rapidly approaching the day after tomorrow, marked the 5th.
村の旧敵にたたりをなすお社様か。今年もあるとして、果たしてその矛を受けるのは誰になるだろうね。
You! Man, that joke is like... That hasn't been funny in 3 years.
あ、僕はここに来るたびにちゃんとお参りしてお賽銭を入れてる。僕じゃないことは確かだよ。
Psych! You thought.
あらそう。近年のお社様は異邦人には特に厳しいって話よ。引っ越してきたばかりとはいえ、前原くんはちゃんとひなみ沢に住んでる村人だけど。
That is true. He is a proper member of Hinamizawa in this chapter especially.
二郎さんは毎年来るだけのただのよそ者。さーて、今年は見逃してもらえるかしら。
ひどいな。
Very comforting thoughts. Thank you, Takano. Tomotake-san was the only one with a pained grin, but we were all smiling, me included. Oyashiro-sama, the one who used a curse to kill people involved with the dam construction project, one after the next. He killed the dam construction manager, killed Satoko's parents for supporting it, and the next year he even killed her aunt. If the demoning way was part of that curse, then you could add Satoshi to the list of victims. As I thought about it, I realized that in the serial freak death incidents, the overwhelming majority had the last name Hojo. Half of the deaths and disappearances had come from the Hojo family. The Hojo family lived here in Hinamizawa. Did that mean Oyashiro-sama punished and cursed them particularly harshly because despite that, they'd been in favor of the dam?
Satokoのおじが帰ってきたって話は聞いてますか？
Takano-san, who had been enjoying a few words with Tomatake-san, was caught unaware by my sudden inquiry. Oh, they did.
あ、ごめんなさ
Did not
い。
know.
今なんて？
あ、いえ、Satokoの両親がたたり殺されて、おばもたたり殺されて、だったら順番的には次はおじの番かなって思ったんです。
That just sounds like wishful thinking, brother.
去年のたたりでおばが無残な死に方をし、それに恐れをなして町に逃げていたやつですよ。
We'll admit it was kind of bold to come back right before Watanagashi, but I guess maybe that's, in his eyes, if he's scared, he's like, maybe I should appeal to Oyashiro-sama.
お社様は確か村を捨てて逃げ出そうとするのは許さなかったですよね。
I hadn't intended to be quite this persistent, but those words, they just flowed out of my mouth without me thinking about it. Right. Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't believe in something so unrealistic, of course, but the fact was that every year, unfortunate accidents and incidents happened to enemies of the village. Like Takano-san said just now, it had happened 4 times. No one could say there wouldn't be a 5th.
ふーん、面白い説ね。確かに過去の犠牲者を見れば北条姓が多いのは事実。 その延長として考えれば、今年は叔父が死ぬか消えるかする可能性は
I feel like
否
Keichi.
め
I
ないわね。
feel like Keiichi's gonna make that a reality.
もう高野さんは起こるかもしれない不幸を笑うのは良くないよ。
ごめんなさいね。でも、お社様のたたりは私のライフワークだし。
That does sound about right. And it could be quite literal. Takano-san gave off a mysterious, somehow intellectual impression, and her life's work was mysterious in its own right. Yeah, I'm gonna be real, that's not a sentence I just plan on forgetting or, like, glancing over, right? I understand, like, a lot of it is just, like, curiosity, but, like, she's somehow involved in, like, the incidents we've seen, right, so far. Could that just be bad luck? Sure, it could be. But I don't think it's completely out of line to say she could be involved somehow, especially when you consider that she, like Mion, was found dead before she reappeared, right? Or before, like, at some point that we saw her alive, right? She was there, but she was dead, right? And so I'm like, maybe that's a sign that she's connected. I don't know. I'm not gonna reach too hard into that now. That's another one of those things. I'm just keeping that in mind. She probably really liked inexplicable supernatural phenomena or something.
高野さんはお社様のたたりに詳しそうですね。どうでしょう、北条の帰ってきた叔父がたたりに会う可能性は。
あら、何？そのおじさんを殺したくて仕方がないみたいね。
Kinda does, huh?
そんなんじゃないです。
No, this is the part where he realizes he genuinely does.
どうだろうね。神様の気まぐれ次第だからね。
前原くん、サンタクロースの正体は知ってる？
Huh? I had a strange question all of a sudden, and I couldn't immediately answer.
なに？知らないの？パパよ。みんなの家のパパ。
なんだ、そういう意味ですか。そりゃそうですよ。どんなものの正体だって最終的には人間です。
This kind of feels like it's alluding to the curse.
だってここは人間しかいない世界なんですから、すべての現象は人間で解明できるはずです。
I felt like I put that somewhat strangely, but Takano-san was not as dissatisfied with that reply as I might have guessed.
あら、その年齢のうちからそれに気づけるなんてなかなかね。人間の世で起こる現象はすべて人間の都合で人間が起こす。では前原くん、もう一度尋ねるわよ。今度はサンタクロースじゃなくてお社様。お社様のたたりの正体は何かわかるかしら？
The people who benefit from others thinking it's a Yashiro-sama. Takano-san took a step towards me and gazed into my eyes as she asked. Santa Claus was really the parents of every family's children. Spoiler? Bro. Alright, that's it. That's wraps. If lionizing that legend was a corporate tactic to try and profit during Christmas sales, then what was Oyashiro-sama, really?
あら、あなたが言ったのよ。ここは人間しかいない世界だって。すべての現象は人間で解明できるって。
Then you gotta explain away all of the deaths by humans, by human actions, yeah?
Keiichi 君。
Alright, there might be a quick jump cut here. It is really raining out there, and so I'm gonna probably a few times, potentially during this video, hit stop recording so that if our power goes out, I don't lose this whole video. This will probably get chopped out, but I guess I'm leaving it in here just in case, because there might be a few jump cuts.
ここだけの話だよ。高野さんはね、お社様のたたりをめぐる一連の連続開始事件をね、ひなみ沢の村人が何かの儀式に基づいて行っている 人為的殺人事件でないかと見ているんだよ。
I fully buy that personally. I mean, it's just the people who are being killed in this. It's like, I don't know. It lines up too well with the whole enemy of the village theory, right? For the most part, right? Just like people that are not liked in the village. Just, oops, I guess we can kill them, right? I will say, I'm starting to think, I think there's a real chance that perhaps it's not like, either we're going to directly see this in this route, right? And this is what I'm looking for, right, from this route. Because I think there's a real chance we might get some more insight into what's going on here. Are these killings on the whims of some group? Or is it kind of copycat killings and just like every year, one person, I don't know, someone decides, you know what? I don't like that person. I feel like, actually, now that I think about it, at first I was thinking that might make sense, and so like Keichi kind of goes rogue and he kills someone this year, right? He kills Tepe, and so this year he's the one, right? And I mean, I guess in theory that could lend credence to the idea that the people responsible for the murders are the ones being demoned away, right? Especially, honestly, you gotta consider the one case that kind of throws a wrench in that is the fourth case, right? Not the chapter 4 case, the fourth case. When the Hojo aunt was killed, right? By seemingly that random drug addict, right? But it was with a baseball bat, right? And so sometimes, like, I'm kind of wondering, what are the odds it was actually Satoshi, right? Because we know that's tied to Satoshi, right? So my point was, like this kind of lends, like, that idea could lend, like, of it being kind of rogues, could lend credence to the idea that the person being demoned away is the person who killed, right? And that they're being demoned away so that they can't, like, reveal, like, anything, right? I don't know how much, like, if I'm completely sold on this yet, but I think there's a real chance this chapter will kind of give us the answers to whether this is some group organizing this every year, or it is, like, relatively unorganized, and one person just kills someone, and then that person gets demoned away, right? I think the big question about that is, what are the odds that it would be exactly one each year? Like, I don't think it's that unlikely that you would, at some point, have two people decide to kill someone, and they're different people, right? And so that's difficult, right? Right, and I mean, even if you kind of look at chapter 2, that was kind of the case, right? Like, Mion went on a little killing spree there, right? And so, like, I mean, like, it's just not... Okay, I mean, maybe that's not the best example. I mean, you do have to keep it in mind, but my point was, like, Mion didn't do it on the same day. She wasn't necessarily trying to reenact the Watanagashi killings, right? Whereas my point was more like, it could be rogues doing it as, like, on Watanagashi, like, because they know that's the one day they're basically allowed to, right? I don't know how much I completely buy this, to be completely honest. Now that I think about it, you know, there's just that big hole of, what are the odds that not a single time would somebody kill, or like two different people kill somebody different on that day, right? I don't know. Feels like there's a very real chance that would happen. So let's just keep moving, honestly. I think Takano's view probably makes more sense than mine, but I could see this chapter giving us real info on that.
誤解しないでね。私はそれに至る教義や思想、別に犯人が誰かなんてことには全く興味がないのよ。そこだけ勘違いしないでちょうだいね。
He said, whoa, don't think good of me or something. Like, jeez. Yeah, I don't care who the culprit is. I could tell only that she was saying some crazy stuff. To use a food analogy, like you'd force feed a duck to be fattened, she forced her words down my throat. That's what it felt like.
そもそもそれを理解するためにはひなみ沢村が鬼ヶ淵村と呼ばれていた古代にまで遡らなければならない。
Are we just gonna get another exposition dump from them?
鬼と血を交わらせたと信じる半人半鬼の仙人たちが
Takano-san, having entered her home field, leaned forward and began to speak of ridiculous matters. Tomotake-san realized she was overawing me and interrupted for me.
高野さん、その話をいきなり圭一君にしても。
Yeah, I've already read it. Come on.
ほら、彼も面食らってるよ。
あら、そう？
Confused? Not really.
続きに興味があったらいつでも言ってね。前原くんくらいの年頃の男の子が好きそうな猟奇的なお話がてんこ盛りなんだから。
ありがとうございます。気が向いたらそのうちに。
For now, I softly and safely gave my refusal. Takano-san seemed a little unhappy that Tomotake-san had rained on her parade, but she stopped talking about it then. Even so, it was still a very interesting story. That Yashiro-sama's curse, which we thought of as strange freak deaths, were really homicides, perpetuated by people of the village.
まあ常識的に考えればそうですよね。たたりなんかで人が死ぬはずない。誰かがたたりになぞらえて殺してるに決まってます。
そうね。それが誰なのかは研究しない方が無難ね。
That is correct. It would be much safer to not try and find out.
高野さんは知ってそうですね。証拠はないまでも確信を持っているくらいには。
あら、どうしてそう思うのかしら？
I just kind of felt it vaguely. It didn't seem like her extreme passion for this research would calm down just because these things were taboo, or because it was safer and easier. This person loved walking through the profound, forbidden abyss of risks and taboos.
それくらいにしなよ、圭一君。せっかく助けてあげたのに、またお社様のたたりの話が始まっちゃうよ。
True.
涼しいうちに散策に行きたかったのにな。
Tomotake-san seemed a little disappointed not to be able to go on the date he'd planned since I had brought up a weird topic. But right now, there's something I wanted to ask, just for a little bit. And that was about whether Satoko's uncle will be chosen for the curses here. You already asked. If he was, then another miracle would happen, just like last year. I mean, yeah, this is the moment I've been expecting. That he finally realizes this, and then I worry that eventually he realizes he could be the harbinger of that. A terrible incident would happen again, but it would release Satoko from her unfortunate circumstances once more.
まあ、もちろんおそらくあの辺りの人たちが関わってるんだろうなって鬼ヶ淵村の歴史を研究していれば自然と至る必然的結末。
それは誰です？
What would I do if I knew? I asked that question to the other me deep inside, but got no reply.
熱心ね。それを知ってどうするつもりかしら？
Wait, we just asked ourselves that.
別に。
知ったらあなたにも危険が降りかかるかもしれないわよ。5年目のたたりはあなただったりして。
I think if he took out Tepe, he probably wouldn't care. Takano-san, toying with Taboo, gave a devilish, satisfied smile, as though nothing in the world would be more amusing. She was probably trying to tease me, but I didn't feel like going along with her little game one bit.
偉そうな能書きでもったいぶってますが、高野さんだってよくは分かってないみたいじゃないですか。
Dang. Didn't you just say that, you thought she did? I'd felt a tinge of irritation at Takano-san's roundabout way of speaking. But those emotions escaped my mouth, like water flowing through a strainer. Even I was surprised at how directly I had spoken out about what I felt. Of course, I wasn't the only one taken aback.
あら、言ってくれるわね。坊やなのに挑発までできるの？
He can do that.
意外に野生的ね。嫌いじゃないわよ。そういうの。
Takano-san's tongue poked out of her mouth. I was convinced that it was long, thin, and split in the middle like a snake's. That would not be the most shocking thing ever.
ならいいわ。教えてあげてもよくってよ。でも、教えてあげる前に3つ誓ってもらうわ。
Interesting. I would love to hear who they're thinking.
私が何を教えても 後悔しない、口外しない、私が言ったなんて絶対言わない。
Yeah, those conditions make sense. I gulped firmly and nodded. Tomotage-san made an exaggerated expression of distress, gave a dry, vague smile, and lit a cigarette.
教えてください。
Was ripping the cigs.
たたりを下しているのは誰です？たたる相手を選んでいるのは誰なんです？
And after I said that, I finally realized why I wanted to know. No, stop it, Higu. Don't do that. Knock it off. No. You better, like, cut back to the same scene. You better. Don't play with me. Despair. Oh no. Of course they wouldn't say anything. Alright, so I'm trying to figure out like what I think the answers are. Okay, I took a bit of a break. And I was correct. We did end up having a power outage, so it was actually kind of good that I took a break. But it's been a bit. Well, as in a few hours. But let's quickly go over some of my thoughts, because right before I left, we had the dramatic scene of Keichi asking Takano who she thinks is responsible for these curse killings. And of course, we didn't get to see it. So I guess she was probably, like, I think there's a good chance whatever her guess is, if it's a guess and not just a no, excuse me, that's probably on the money. And so, you know, I kind of thought about it, and I think there are a few possibilities. I'm not sure which one I believe the most right now. So I think the possibilities are, one, Irie, right? And I think he's probably my prime suspect. Right, okay, so Irie, or a group that Irie is associated with, to be clear. Maybe not necessarily Irie, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Irie is at least involved, right? Number two, we probably are actually ranked in, I think, order of likeliness. Next up is probably just like the kind of rogue actor theory that it's individuals doing these, and that the police are technically right in that they're isolated incidents, but they're maybe being driven by certain people in a way, right? It wouldn't completely shock me. Like I said earlier, though, the main thing that turns me off of that theory is the odds that not one time would we have like an accidental, like, two people wanted to get rid of an enemy of the village in the same year, right? It feels like there has to be some kind of coordination there. So second place is arguably too high for that theory, to be honest. But my thing is, like, well, okay, I don't know. I guess I'm basing that theory on the fact that I think Keiichi is going to kill in this route. But I guess there's nothing saying that he wouldn't get directed to by someone else first. So I don't know. Maybe I should have put that one lower. Third is Takano, or a group Takano is associated with. I think that's a bold claim, honestly, given that she's died twice as a result of these curse killings. But I don't know. You see someone that in the know, and it's hard to not at least be suspicious of them, right? Especially given her attitudes towards everything, right? I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if her dying is like a red herring somehow, and that they're going to come back around and explain some of these things away. Especially given that we do know that Takano was dead, right, during chapter 2, right? And what did she have to gain by baiting us in? right? To that storehouse, right? I say bait, right? Like Keichi wanted to go in, but like she really like was the one who ultimately swayed him, right? Just that little extra bit that he needed. Um, last place out of my real possibilities is like Oishi, I guess. I don't know. I'm not super sold on the idea that Oishi is in on this, but it's been directly mentioned in the text, and so I feel like I have to mention it at least, right? It is possible. I'm still of the belief that it's just generally people who talk to the police are not appreciated in Hinamizawa, right? I think that makes more sense to me. I guess arguably I should have ranked the Sonozaki family in there somewhere, right? I think it's likely that the Sonozakis are involved with whatever the big group is, if there is one, right? Like that group that could be associated with Takano or Irie. Really, though, I think it's more likely that it's some group that involves like Irie, the Sonozakis, to an extent. Maybe not all of the Sonozakis, right? But like at least some of the Hinamizawa, like specific ones. I think there's something to be said about how, like, I don't know. After chapter 2, I'm not completely sold that it's all the Sonozakis, right? The fact that they wanted to really make us think that makes me think it's not that, right? And maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Sonozakis are involved, but not necessarily like the ringleaders of everything. In that sense, like I think honestly, I'd be shocked if they weren't involved in some decently significant way. I think that's a better way to put it. But I don't know. In my mind right now, they're not the main candidates for ringleaders, I guess. So that's just kind of my thoughts on who she might have said, right? I think it's also really important to know, or note this sentence right here. And after I said that, I finally realized why I wanted to know, right? He clearly realized he wants, oh goodness, Satoko's uncle, what's his name? Tepe? I think it's Tepe. Wants that man to die. Wants the last big Hojo domino in his eyes to fall. I think the real concern is like what happens to Satoko if that happens. Hopefully nothing, but I think we can just move on now. Many of my classmates were playing freely in the schoolyard. A few of them had just run out of the school building after putting on their shoes and tapping their toes to the ground. It looked like they had just finished eating lunch. From a time manipulating standpoint, I guess I succeeded.
前原さん、大丈夫なんですか?
A few girls noticed me and came running over. It was only natural that they were worried. You'd think if someone wasn't there in the morning, they'd be out the rest of the day.
まあ遅刻さ、気にしないでくれ。それよりサトコはどうだ？今日は来てるか?
The girls exchanged glances. I saw a thin shadow fall over their faces and knew the answer without needing to hear them reply. Satoko was absent today, too. When all was said and done, after being out 3 days, she'd only come back for one. It's like half of one, too. And now she was out again. Who knew if she would come tomorrow?
でも、さとこちゃんから電話があったって先生言ってました。風邪って言ってたよね。
No, she doesn't.
みんな家に帰ったらうがいをちゃんとしましょうって先生言ってました。
She does not have a cold. Wait a minute, Chie-sensei. That's a little too thick-headed, don't you think? You're a teacher, aren't you? Why can't you be more sensitive and catch on to the fact that your pupil is sending out an SOS? Bro, I'm gonna be honest, the thing is, I don't think it is an SOS, really. Right? Like, Satoko is probably legitimately trying to cover this up, right? It's unfortunately quite common in abuse victims, right? To do things like of that nature, right? I'm not gonna pretend I'm like the expert on abuse, right? But to my knowledge, that is relatively normal. Trying to make excuses, right? It could be an SOS, but I don't know. Like Irie said, I think there's a good chance she has too much pride for that. But even if she did, there was nothing we could hope for. Yeah, I guess the other thing is, I mean, what do? Put it on blast to the whole class? Hey guys, Satoko's being abused. That's why she's not at school today. Like, for her sake, it's probably better that you let people think she's sick and hope the situation resolves itself before people really start to question it. The most she could do was a home visitation. She didn't have any right to take Satoko from her uncle into safety. No matter the result, it would end up just like the public agencies, with a wait-and-see attitude. It would just piss Satoko's uncle off, and her suffering would only grow deeper. And wasn't saying she had a cold the best option?
そうだな。みんなも風邪に気をつけろよ。
Yeah.
もう行っていいぜ。昼休みはまだ長いぞ。
The girls excitedly scattered in the schoolyard. Rena was yelling out the classroom window, waving her hand. A moment later, Mio and Rika-chan poked their heads out too.
ケイイチまでお休みしましたから、とても心配しましたのですよ。
He worried himself into sleeping, or like going to sleep late and then oversleeping. Something slight.
でもよかった。顔色もそんなに悪くないし、とりあえず元気そう。
I felt a little uncomfortable with her saying that I didn't look sick, but I didn't care that much.
どうしたの？寝坊？
遅刻は遅刻だろ。それとも、電車の事故で遅刻したとでも言えば、許してくれるのか？
Probably not.
寝坊？
Mia was being a bit persistent. Was she gonna put on her club president cap and scold me for being late? Well, maybe she didn't have it in for me, so I briefly stated that she was right.
まだね、お弁当あるよ。みんなで食べよう。やっぱりね、ケイチくんがいないと盛り上がらないよね。
サトコは休みなんだな。
Even Rena, feigning cheerfulness, couldn't stand to hear that, and her face darkened.
朝、電話があったらしいよ。風がぶり返したから、また休むってさ。
Right. Likely story.
長引くかもしれないって言ってた。かわいそうなので、みんなでお見舞いに行こうという話が出ていますのですよ。
Something is telling me the uncle would not appreciate that.
何言ってんだよ、リカちゃん。
Not pleased with Rika-chan wearing a wide smile as though it was a happy occasion, I threw cold water on her.
サトコが風邪なんかじゃないことは、俺たちが一番知ってるだろ。たとえ冗談でも、二度とそういう白々しいことを言うな。次は怒るからな。
Yeah, he's really starting to snap at his friends. Like lash out at him. Rika-chan furrowed her brow, looked down, and mumbled an apology.
ケイチくんだけじゃないよ。みんな辛いよ。
Yeah.
俺だけが悩んでるなんて思ってない。でも、みんな何もできないのは本当だろ。
それはそうだけど。でも。
I got the feeling I would cause another fight if this exchange went on, so I apologized first.
ごめん、謝るから、今の話は忘れてくれ。辛いのは、みんなも同じだよな。
It was at least clear, however, that I was the only one who had worried so much about rescuing her. At the very least, everyone else probably got the normal amount of sleep last night. Probably had good dreams, too. I'm gonna be honest, that is, maybe not as likely as you'd think. They definitely hadn't stayed up all night thinking so desperately. I mean, that's quite possible. Right? That's quite possible.
登校してきていきなりこんなこと聞いて気を悪くするかもしれないけど、ケイちゃん今日遅刻したよね。サトコが今日欠席したこととは関係ある？
は？ミオ、お前何の話してるんだ？
ケイちゃんはたまにちょっとつ猛進なところがあるからね。今朝サトコと一緒にケイちゃんも休んだ時、サトコを家から連れ出してどこかにかくまったんじゃないかって本
No,
気で思った。
he considered it, but he didn't do it. Easy for you to say. If I could have, I'd have done that last night. None of them had really thought about how difficult that clear-as-day solution was. No, they probably have all thought about that. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I feel like Keichi is really good at underestimating his friends, like very consistently. I was up thinking all night, thinking until the night was brightening. And then I concluded that I couldn't do anything of the sort.
バカかお前。人間一人かくまうなんてできるもんかよ。
そうだね。ごめん。気を悪くしたなら謝るよ。
At least she seems to really... She probably knows he was considering it, and that's the confirmation that He at least is smart enough to know that he couldn't.
別にいいよ。それより、飯にしようぜ。腹が減ってんだ。
I took my bento box out of my bag. Everyone moved to make a spot for me to sit.
前原くん、今来たんですか？
Don't worry about what I'm doing. And just as I was about to stick my chopsticks in, Chie-sensei came along.
あ、はい。遅刻してすみません。寝坊しまして。
What the heck? Even the teacher was giving me that strange look.
お弁当を食べたら、院長と前原くんは職員室に来てください。
Mion too? Was Mion late or something?
ちょっとお話がありますので。
I don't know if she's late or if this is just about Satoko. I mean, like, presumably it's about Satoko either way, but probably about Satoko, I thought. Since they left it at that, I went back out into the hallway.
弁当を食うまでもないだろう。行こうぜ、ミオ。
そうだね。
Mion and I exchanged looks, nodded to each other, and got up.
さとこちゃんの話だろうね。
I mean, yeah, presumably. No doubt about it. They were saying she had a cold, but everyone in class knew the truth. I didn't think that would have reached the teacher's ears by now.
僕がずっととぼけるので、僕に聞くのをやめたのでしょう。
Yeah, probably. Revealing the truth to the teacher would only worsen the situation. Was that why she hadn't said anything? Or was it because she was Satoko's friend? I knew that she was trying to endure the trial of her uncle's abuse in order to get her brother to come home.
どうする？今のうちに私たちなりの統一見解を出した方がいいかもね。
リカちゃんはどうしたい？
Satoko's closest and best friend was Rika-chan. However much I pretended to be her Nini, it didn't come close to the amount of time they'd spent together. So I felt like her opinion should be held in the highest regard.
俺は、サトコがどうしておじにいじめられてるのを耐えてるか知ってる。
Everyone looked startled and turned to me.
昔のサトコはいじめられると、きっと泣きながら兄の背中に隠れてた。でも結局、そのせいで兄が逃げてしまったんだと、サトコは思ってる。
誰に聞いたのかな？
監督か。
Indeed. I nodded quietly.
サトコは、おじのいじめに耐えれば、兄が帰ってくると信じることによって、今を耐え抜こうとしてるのかもしれない。でも、そんな思い込みとサトシが帰ってくるのは、全く無関係なことだ。サトコには悪いが、それが現実だ。
Everyone hung their heads. Everyone was thinking the same thing.
サトコは、多分誰の助けも喜ばない。
That is correct.
自分一人の力で耐え忍びたいと思ってる。でも、それを尊重してやるのが、果たして正しいだろうか、俺は思わない。一時、サトコに恨まれることになろうと、サトコの意志に関わらず、助けるべき時があると思う。俺はそれが、今じゃないかと思ってる。
I told them all about what I saw and how I felt when I went to Satoko's house yesterday.
ケイチ君は話すべきだと思ってるってことだね。
もちろん、公的機関への通報で、サトコが保護されるのが確定してからだ。その確認のないうちは、サトコをかえって危険にさらすこともあり得るからな。
難しいね。先生との会話の中で、その確約ってのが取れるわけ？
I had no confidence, but we had to try. Meanwhile, Rika-chan had her hand raised for a while, as if asking for an opportunity to speak.
ケイチに任せますです。
いいのかい、リカちゃん。
ケイチに任せますです。
Hold on. I'm trying to see if there's a clip of Rika saying Keiichi's name. Nope, there sure isn't before now. I mean, she threw on the knee in there, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that's like indicative of like brother, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect and I'm reading too much into that. So probably move on. But if so, it's interesting that she would throw that in there. Guess it kind of shows that it would show, if I'm remembering this correctly, Right. Hold on, let me just look this up. Used as a suffix. Yeah, it's used as a suffix after the name of someone who is an older brother. I don't think she has used. I'm almost positive she hasn't used that in the past. So I think she's like indicating some kind of respect for the relationship that him and Satoko ended up with in this chapter specifically.
ケイチはここにいる誰よりもサトコのことを考えていますです。
Or maybe I'm still reading too much into that. That's what it seemed like to me.
そのケイチが話すべき時だと判断したなら、僕は文句なんか言わないのですよ。
ありがとう。ミオもレナもそれでいいか？
Mion seemed to hesitate, not knowing if she should agree. But when she saw Rena's firm nod, she made up her mind and did the same.
よし、行くぞ、ミオ。
Only Chie-sensei was in the teacher's lounge. We didn't see the principal anywhere. The schedule on the blackboard under the principal's name said training, going straight home. Our principal's sense of justice was too strong. Satoko's problems wouldn't be solved with something so vague. Maybe it was a stroke of good luck that he wasn't here. When the teacher saw Mion and I come in, she closed up her curry bento, saving the rest for later. That's how you know she means business.
そこへおかけなさい。
She told us to take a seat in the chairs directly in front of the principal's seat. I hadn't sat in this chair since doing the paperwork for transferring in. The two of us sat there uncomfortably before the teacher walked over carrying a notebook and a ballpoint pen and sat in front of us.
前原くん、今日は午前中お休みでしたけど、何かありましたか？
すみません、寝坊です。
本当に？
先生に嘘言っても。
She narrowed her eyes at me in suspicion. Now I was sure of it. She wanted to talk about Satoko.
まず、二人とも知ってると思いますけど、お友達の北条さんがここしばらくお休みしてますね。
Indeed. Neither Mio nor I had anything to say in response, but the teacher proceeded, not minding.
何か知っていますか？クラスで良くない噂をしている人たちがいます。
Mio looked down and remained silent, as though she were being lectured. She sent me a quick glance. Everyone had made up their minds. They'd be leaving things to me.
委員長、前原くんも。先生は別に怒ってるんじゃありませんよ。もしも知っていたら教えてほしいとお願いしているだけです。
先生、先にこっちから質問してもいいですか？
She must not have anticipated that response. She looked surprised.
クラス中でサトコのどんな噂が飛び交ってるかは知りませんが、仮にその噂が真実だったとして、先生はどうするつもりですか？
どうするもこうするも、その話が本当なら放っておけません。
放っておけないって、具体的にはどう放っておけないんですか？
Sensei's eyebrows shot up. Maybe I said it like I was trying to pick a fight.
前原くん、先生は真面目にお話ししてるんですよ。
And so is he, that's the thing.
先生こそ、俺はすごく真面目な話をしているんです。まず答えてください。真実だったとして、どう放っておけないんです？
Sensei took a few breaths, then began to speak slowly.
まず状況を確かめるために北条さんの家を家庭訪問します。
おじに怒鳴りつけられて追い返されるかもしれませんね。まあいいや、仮におじと聡子に会えたとします。それで？
そして真意を聞きます。その事実が確認できたなら指導します。
You don't need to do all that.
指導って曖昧な言い方はやめてください。具体的には何をするんですか？
Even despite my tone being so provocative, Chie-sensei bit back her emotions and listened calmly. I thought then that she was a good teacher. Chie-sensei really did have her students' best interests at heart. But she didn't have the power or the authority to save Satoko. If she let her sense of justice run away with her, the situation could get more complex. Sensei folded her arms, and for a few moments she closed her eyes as though mentally concentrating. And when they opened again, there was a strictness in her eyes I'd never seen before.
児童福祉法という法律があります。この法律で児童に対する虐待は何人に対しても認められていないことが明記されています。
らしいですね。それで？
沖宮の生活相談所へ通報します。さっき 前原くんは追い返されると言いましたね。この相談所の職員は必要に応じて警察官を同行させることができます。恫喝には絶対に屈しません。
その福祉士というお役所の人は連絡して書類で申請して何日後に助けに来てくれるんです？
即日です。彼らの仕事は児童の安全を緊急に保護することですから。
知ってますよ。緊急性があると判断された場合ですよね。認められなかったら先生と同じ指導をして様子見をするんですよね。見てるだけ。聡子の叔父の機嫌を悪くして聡子をその場に残したままそれっきり。
ケイちゃん、ちょっと言い過ぎ。
嘘はついてないだろ。去年だか一昨年だかに児童相談所が来た時がまさにそうだったんだろう。その結果どうなった？俺よりもミオや先生の方がよっぽどよく知ってるだろうが。
You gotta reel it in, bro. I understand why you're taking this so serious and why it's so upsetting, but it's really not solving the problem, right? Like, acting like getting so angry all the time. I'd said too much. I didn't need Mio to tell me that. I was talking crazy and itching for a fight. I was supposed to be telling her about the situation only after I was sure we could save Satoko. But I basically told her everything right from the start. Yeah, you did. Chie-sensei looked at the clock, stood up, and picked up the phone at the principal's seat.
もしもし、内線の3455をお願いします。
Oh, Lord.
いいの？ケイちゃん、本当に大丈夫かな？
Guess we'll see. It was too late. The die had been cast. Now we could only pray.
お世話になっております。ひなみ沢文庫教諭の千恵と申しますが、指導室の渡辺主事はいらっしゃいますでしょうか？はい、ちょっと急用がございまして、至急校長と連絡が取りたいのですが、はい、お願いします。緊急とお伝えください。よろしくお願いします。
The teacher put down the phone and tilted her head back and took a breath, like I always did.
二人にもう一度だけ聞きます。クラスのみんなの噂はすべて本当なんですね。
Dude, at this point you might as well tell her yes.
はい。俺は昨日聡子の家に行って実際にどういうことになっているのか見ました。
あとは先生に任せてください。
We'll see, man. I would like to believe that this ends with, the welfare officers coming and, like fixing this situation, but I will agree with Keichi. It probably won't end well. I mostly think that because for the sake of the plot, I would be kind of shocked if this situation just instantly resolves itself, but yeah, actually that is the main reason, right? I don't know. I'm really steadfast in the belief that he's gonna somehow get involved in the Watanagashi killing, and not as the recipient.
聡子ちゃんはきっと先生が何とかします。
なんとか？いい加減なことを言わないでください。なんとかじゃない。絶対でなければならない。もしもまた様子見なんてことになったら、先生はどう責任を取るつもりですか？
While I was yelling, the phone rang. Yeah, probably best to just ignore him. Chi-sensei snatched the receiver up first.
もしもし。研修中申し訳ありません。はい。実は例の北条聡子さんの件でお話が。はい。
Sensei waved us away, telling us we could leave now. Mion went to leave, but I held my ground. I had a responsibility to make sure she stopped saying such vague, ambiguous things. It didn't look like she was going to say anything substantial, and I'd tell them the truth, even if I had to steal the phone from her.
はい。いえ、まだ相談所には。はい。まだ確認はしていませんが、クラスのこの話では相当な様子です。
相当なんてもんじゃないぞ。すぐにだ。今すぐ何とかしろ。通報するならどこへだっていい。でもな、もしも様子見なんてことになってみろ。ただじゃ済まさないからな。
I yelled angrily at Sensei and the principal on the other end. I wanted to somehow, some way, convey to them just how dangerous her situation was right now.
それは分かっています。ちゃんと伝えますから。委員長、前原君を連れて教室に戻りなさい。
Yeah, bro is not stable right now. Straight up, he is not stable.
はい。行くよ、ケイちゃん。あとは先生たちに任せよ。
絶対だぞ。
Till the very last moment, I glared at Sensei. Chie-sensei was feeling pressured by the likes of me. Idiot, this isn't the time to feel pressured. Now's the time when you give me a firm nod to reassure me. Even so, we've already left things in her hands. At this point, we really can't do anything but pray. Bang. We even shut the door to the teacher's lounge. Alright. Well, the ball is in their court here soon, you know. Well, I guess the ball's already in the school's court. We'll see if they do anything with that. Let's go ahead and check these out. Article 2, Definition of Child Abuse. The term child abuse means the following acts committed by a custodian, meaning a person who exercises parental authority, a guardian of a minor, or other person who is currently engaged in the custody of child. Hereinafter, the same shall apply. Against a child, meaning a person who is under 18 years of age. Hereinafter, the same shall apply. 1. Assault the child in a manner that will cause or is likely to cause external injury on the body of a child. 2. Engage in indecency against a child or cause the child to engage in indecency. 3. Substantially reduce the amount of food for the child or abandon and neglect the child for a long time period in a manner that may interfere with normal development of the child mentally or physically, or otherwise materially fail to perform the duty of a custodian. Or 4. Speak or behave in a manner that would be significantly traumatic to the child. Article 3. Prohibition of child abuse. No person shall abuse a child. Law number. Act number 82 of 2000. Authored by the Minister of Health and Welfare. Just like looking at the definitions of it. Statistics from the Ministry of Health and Welfare. I guess we can kind of look back at that real quick. Whoops. We'll look at that in a second. So I think to me it's pretty obvious. This one has already occurred. The first one. The second one, that better not have occurred. That's all I'm gonna say. Number 2 better not have occurred. Number 3, substantially, I think that one's debatable, unfortunately, right? He is withholding meals from her as punishment. But I think by the letter of their law, right, unless she is straight up not getting enough food, right, it doesn't necessarily break this, or the food part, at least. The abandoning the child for a long period of time that may interfere with normal development, mentally or physically, or fail to perform their duty of a custodian. I think if they realize that dude was literally gone for an entire year, right, this could work, or that could apply. 4, I think that one's really vague and kind of subjective. From what I saw, it seemed like 4 applies too. So arguably at least 3 of them apply. So I don't think there's any chance that like they look at Satoko and are like, no, none of these can even, or like, well, do I want to say that they couldn't think that? No, I don't want to say that, because I think they could. 4 is too subjective, right? So you could easily get rid of that one. 3, again, I don't think the food argument would really hold ground. The long period of time argument, Satoko might not want to bring that up, right? Because that could potentially affect Rika as well if they learn of her living conditions, and so maybe she doesn't want to bring that up. Or like, I don't know, I would assume there's like, I don't know if there's any like paper trail indicating where he actually lived. I think it's well known, like for the most part, among a lot of people that he did not live in Hinamizawa, so you could probably verify that pretty easily, but like, I don't know, maybe they would rule somehow that it was fine, right? I don't know. 1, again, you could probably, as Satoko, explain that away as, no, I tripped. That was not me being hit, right? That's one of the ones that, I mean, without, short of seeing them in the act, how do you really prove that's what caused injuries like that? So unfortunately, I could see the welfare workers being like, no, that's not enough for us to act instantly. I hope it's not. I hope they will see it in act. But again, I would be kind of shocked for the sake of the plot itself. Alright, so let's move to the next one. Year 19 blank. Principal abusers in cases reported to the Ministry of Health and Welfare. Total, 5,352. Mother by blood, 2,943, 55%. Mother not by blood, 203, 3.8%. Father by blood, 1,445, 27%. Father not by blood, 488, 9.1%. Year 19 blank. Instances by type of abuse in cases reported to the Ministry of Health and Welfare. Total 5,352. Physical abuse 2,780, 51.9%. Neglect, abandonment of child 1,728, 32.3%. Physiological abuse. Psychological, not physiological. Whoops. Psychological abuse 458, 8.6%. Forbidden from going to school 75, 1.4%. Oh yeah, that one also definitely applies. Sexual violence 311, 5.8%. Why are they playing the creepy music? Why are they playing the creepy music? Stop. Oh, please don't let sexual violence apply. It's like one of the only ways this could get worse. Like one of the only ways this could get worse. Please no. Okay, so this was an interesting chapter. I was kind of right that this was a lot of build-up. Things haven't really blown up yet, but they're clearly setting. They've clearly set that up. So first of all, let's start from the beginning. The beginning of the episode was just Keichi trying to figure out ways to rescue Satoko. He spent a lot of time on this, and eventually, he realized he couldn't. Right, there was nothing he could really do. Right, he wanted to like hide her in his home, and that just is not. That's not possible. Like, just not a thing that was going to happen. And he realized this eventually, and like, yeah. But one of the big things is like it's taking an active detriment on his mental state, right? Knowing that Satoko is being abused like she is, right, is hurting his mental state. He's not able to sleep, which affects your mental state even further, right? And it's really, you can tell by how aggressive Keichi has gotten in this chapter compared to normal Keichi. Keichi can be aggressive at times, right? He can lash out at people, but in chapter 3, it's been different. Like, it's constant all the time. In this episode in particular, so many instances of it. Right? He's not handling this well. In all fairness, I can't blame someone for not taking this well, right? Like, I think that's relatively normal, but I worry for Keichi too, right? I'm not just worried about how this affects Satoko. I'm worried a lot about how it's going to affect Keichi. I'm worried about how it's going to affect everyone, of course, but again, Keichi, it feels like it's affecting him in a different way. Like everyone there admitted, he's the one worried about her the most. So I guess we can kind of move on from that. He overslept, was late for school, and he met Tomitake and Takano. They had some conversations about Yashiro-sama's curse, and an interesting development occurred. Them talking and discussing, right? And Keiichi being like, you know who is behind the curse killings, don't you? Right? Because they are all very convinced it's human-made, right? Which I would generally agree with. I do think it is caused by humans. Like masquerading as masquerading their deeds as the work of a Yashiro-sama. And so he straight up asks who's behind it, and Takano tells him, or at least who she thinks. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that. Right after that revelation, I kind of talked about who I thought it would be. I'll kind of briefly run over it again. I don't have like a timestamp, but just look for the end of the section with Takano in the timeline if you really want to hear a little more in depth. So the really quick TLDR of who I think she could have mentioned. First of all, Irie, or a group associated with Irie, is in the number 1 spot. I don't know, too many things linking him. I mean, first of all, just the Kantoku, right, is already bad enough. And then on top of that, you have his strong convictions specifically regarding Satoko. He really cares about Satoko. And I know that doesn't necessarily tie him to all the past cases, but it could easily tie him into 2 of them, right? Like very easily could tie him into 2 different cases, that being the 2nd and the 4th one. And if the Kantoku line is indicative of him being like the foreman, right, from the first case, that's a 3rd one, right? And that leaves only 1 that we don't know his involvement in, right, that already happened. And so, it's kind of some stretches, but or maybe not stretches, just not full information, right? And so I'm, making some leaps in logic, right? Like ignoring the third case. Like, why would he be involved in that? I don't know, right? And I think it's probably a group around him too. And so maybe that it just explains away the third one. But next, in my initial beliefs, I would arguably drop this one now, but I'm going to keep it the same as it was earlier for the sake of simplicity, and that is the idea that it's actually rogue actors killing people, right? And kind of, it's not necessarily premeditated by a group, right? Rather, it is individuals deciding, you know what? For the good of Hinamizawa, I'm going to get rid of this person, right? I think it is for the good of Hinamizawa. And the reason I think this could drop a bit lower is the fact that I feel like there is a decent chance there'd be a slip up eventually by now, that two different people would have tried to kill someone, and like in the same year, given that it's unorganized. If it's just copycat killers, right? And so, given that that's not the case, I'm like, could it just be good luck? Sure. But I think there's a good chance I think there's a real chance that is the proof that that is not the case. Third on my list of possibilities was some like Takano or a group tied to Takano. Because I think it's really worth noting that Takano is obviously very invested in who is running this. It could, in theory, explain her connection with Toмотake, and why they are looking so much into this, but I don't know. I don't know how much I really buy it. I kind of threw her in there for the sake of completeness, but she does seem to somehow be linked. Honestly, I think it's more likely, if in the case that it's Takano, I think it's more likely that Toмотake is actually not involved, at this very instant. I don't know, maybe that's cope, but the fact that Toмотake is dying makes me think it's less likely, and it doesn't feel on the surface like he's actively potentially luring us into these situations quite like Takano has. And I specifically also think into the whole Takano was literally dead in chapter 2 before she successfully got Keichi to come into the storehouse, right? That last push he needed, right? And so I don't know, I wouldn't be completely floored if Takano was somehow involved, mainly because of that little tidbit in chapter 2. I'm like, I feel like that means there is probably something up, right, with her, and it could indicate that she's involved somehow. Then you gotta wonder why she's dying, and I don't know, and that's why she's low on the list. The final one is Oishi. I don't know. The game was kind of pushing it at first, as him as the harbinger of Yashiro-sama or Yashiro-sama's servant. I don't buy it right now. I just don't buy it. This is one of those things where it feels like the game wants me to believe that, and I just don't. Right? I think they're cap. Is it possible? Sure. That's why I listed them. Right? But I would be kind of shocked right now. I think it's just more likely that people who interact with the police are more likely to be picked as victims. Right? So that's kind of my list on who I think Takano might have told us. But then after all that, there's yet another really big event. Keiichi goes to school and he's called into the teacher's office, and they realize look, realistically, Chie-sensei knows at this point, right? Most likely. Probably has heard the rumors. And she called in Mion and Keiichi. Right, and so they were like, okay, yeah, we know what this is about. And so as a group, they came to the consensus that they would let Keiichi decide. And Keiichi was of the opinion that they should determine if Chie will be able to help and then tell her. So they go to the principal's office, or not principal's office, teacher's lounge, to discuss that with her. And he almost immediately blows their cover, right, basically. Right, he immediately, lets the real story slip. And Chie ends up calling the principal about the Satoko situation, and it seems they're going to report it, right? Very clearly, it seems that way. I mean, Keichi seemed to realize as much too. And he screams at her like, "You better not mess this up," right? Like, because he's worried it's just going to make it worse for her. And that's where the chapter ends. And so, man, we'll see. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as simple as call the child welfare services and GG, we're done. Right? I wouldn't be shocked if next chapter they show up, they decide to take a wait and see approach. This greatly pisses off Keiichi, and then in the next episode he finds a way to kill Teppei. That is my current guess. But honestly, that's all for this episode. This was a good episode, right? It wasn't like the most plot twisty episode, I guess, but it was some great setup for the rest of the chapter, I think. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The next one will presumably be out in 3 days, unless I just can't bring myself to record Higu again before I leave. So whenever that episode does come out, I hope to see you guys there. Peace.